Let's now take a deeper dive into the situation in Hong Kong with the help from an expert who's there on the ground. And for that, I'm pleased to have Dr. Ming SING, Associate Professor at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology's Division of Social Science, joining us on the phone in Hong Kong. Professor Singh, thank you for coming on tonight.
And you're welcome.
Now, let's go back a bit. These mass protests have been sparked by a controversial extradition bill, which has now been put on hold or is dead, as Chief Executive Carrie Lam stated last month. The discontent over China's influence on the city is very much apparent. What started as opposition to the bill has now evolved to citywide and weekly protests calling for reform. What are the issues fueling these protests?
I think the issue, there are multiple issues. Obviously, one of the issues is the sharply escalating use of excessive force by the Hong Kong police, which has been, to some extent, certified by the Amnesty International in Hong Kong. Because on June 9th, the Amnesty International pointed out that 15 videos it has examined clearly show that the police has used excessive use of force. And then in another incident in July, there has also been widespread evidence that there was a collusion between the police and some local gangsters or mafia in trying to discourage the movement from continuing. So, besides the 5 demands, the alleged collusion between the police and the state, okay, which try to collaborate and try to defeat the movement, has aroused great sympathy, anger, and feeling of injustice. And those feelings have kept up the movement.
Right, there have been reports that the Chinese military may get involved. How do you see these reports, and do you think there will be any kind of military intervention?
I think the chance is very slim because, number one, it is not necessary, okay? It has been argued by a local scholar that the Chinese has already sent 2,000 plus police force into Hong Kong by mimicking as Hong Kong policemen. And number two, I think China is well aware of the fact that the whole world is watching, including the United States. Donald Trump said within the last 4 hours that should the Chinese government use army to crack down bloodily in Hong Kong, then there would be no trade deal between the United States and China. And then other Western powers have also given a very serious warning that violence should not be the way out. So, there's also another very powerful fact that Hong Kong remains the top spot in internationalizing renminbi. Okay, it accounts for internationalizing more than 70% of renminbi around the world. And Hong Kong also remains the top spot in helping to find the capital for Chinese companies. The Chinese companies have raised more capital from Hong Kong alone in the last 7 years than in mainland China, okay, all added up all together. So it will be a lose-lose game should Beijing try to crack down, okay? That would be to no one that will be a completely suicidal tactic.
Right, it's been 11 weeks of protests, just under 3 months since these protests have started. When and how do you expect this issue to be settled, and when do you think Hong Kong will be able to return to normalcy?
I think the ball is now in the court of Beijing because, as you have just reported, yesterday, allegedly there were 1.7 million protesters. The figure given by the police actually was only referring to the one who entered the park at the beginning. The police acknowledged this morning that they have never counted the total number of protesters walking on the street and entering the park in the many hours after the beginning of the walk. So as we can see, I would not be surprised to see that yesterday there were at least 1 million protesters coming out again in a very peaceful, non-violent manner, which shows the stamina, the momentum of the general public. I think the general public have been really angered by the lack of real commitment on the part of the Hong Kong government and the Beijing government to withdraw completely the draconian bill, which would endanger the rule of law and freedoms in Hong Kong. And they were equally angered by the widely perceived police and mafia collusion in Hong Kong. And not to mention that they were really afraid that Hong Kong would change, would be transformed from what we call a hybrid regime to an entirely authoritarian regime. Because once the law is passed, then the rule of law in Hong Kong would collapse, and even the freedom from fear would vanish. So that's why the momentum of the movement has been kept on and on without a halt. So the ball is really on Beijing's in the court of Beijing.
Right, Dr. Ming Sing, I'm afraid that's all the time that we have for you tonight. Do stay safe out there, and hopefully we can speak to you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.